It all started on a calm Saturday morning that should have been peaceful for everyone in our neighborhood. The sun was just beginning to warm the streets, and my wife, who was 7 months pregnant, wanted to stretch her legs. Her doctor had advised her to take short daily walks, and our quiet cul-de-sac was usually the perfect place for that. She moved at a slow, steady pace, one hand resting on her belly, the other holding her phone in case she needed to reach me. We never imagined something as simple as walking could cause trouble, especially from someone who lived just down the street. That someone was Karen, the self-appointed enforcer of the HOA, the kind of person who believed every inch of the neighborhood was under her personal authority. She had already confronted me twice before, once for leaving my trash bins out for 10 extra minutes, and another time because our mailbox color didn't match the HOA-approved shade. I had learned to brush her off, but my wife? She was always polite, even to people who didn't deserve it. That morning, my wife had barely made it past Karen's driveway when it began. Karen flung open her front door, stepping outside in her robe, holding a mug like she owned the sunrise. Her voice sliced through the peaceful morning. "Excuse me, could you not stomp around so loud? Some of us are trying to have a quiet morning." My wife blinked, startled. "I'm just walking," she replied softly. "I didn't mean to bother anyone." But, of course, reasoning with Karen was like arguing with a storm. She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms, clearly offended that someone dared to exist within her earshot. "Well, I can hear you all the way inside my living room." "It's very inconsiderate," she snapped. "You know, this neighborhood has noise standards, and walking like that, especially this early, is disturbing the peace." My wife looked down at her sandals, utterly confused. "Ma'am, it's 9:30 in the morning," she said gently. "I'm just getting some exercise. The sidewalk's public." That should have been the end of it. But Karen wasn't satisfied with being merely unpleasant. She wanted to control. She muttered something under her breath and went back inside, slamming her door just loud enough to make a point. My wife shrugged it off, deciding it wasn't worth engaging. She continued her walk, slow and careful, enjoying the breeze that rustled through the trees. About 10 minutes later, as she was circling back toward our house, she heard a siren in the distance, faint at first, but growing louder. She turned around just as a police cruiser rolled up the street, lights flashing but siren now off. 2 officers stepped out, exchanging confused looks as they glanced at their notes and then toward Karen's house. That's when Karen came marching out again, phone still in hand, pointing directly at my wife like she'd just caught a fugitive. "There she is," she shouted. "That's the woman disturbing the peace. She's been walking up and down, making noise for half an hour." The officers hesitated, clearly unsure what they'd just walked into. My wife stood frozen, shocked. "You called the police?" "For walking?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Karen lifted her chin with that smug expression she always wore when she thought she was right. "Yes, I did. This is a quiet community." She's stomping and huffing so loudly that I can't even enjoy my coffee. "I'm the HOA vice chair, and I have every right to report disruptive behavior." The older officer exchanged a look with his partner that said it all. "You've got to be kidding me." Still, they approached my wife calmly. "Ma'am," one began, "we got a report about a possible disturbance. Are you okay?" My wife nodded, bewildered. "I'm fine. I'm just walking. My doctor told me to stay active because of my pregnancy." Karen scoffed from the background. "Pregnant or not, it's no excuse to behave like that." I can feel the vibrations through my window. The younger officer rubbed his forehead like he was trying to stay professional. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "walking on the sidewalk isn't a crime. And unless there's property damage or some kind of actual noise violation, this isn't something for us to intervene in." But Karen wasn't letting go. "So you're telling me there's nothing you can do?" "She's disrupting the peace of the entire block." The officer sighed. "We've had calls like this before. You can't call 911 for something like this. It's an emergency line." "This is not an emergency." Karen's face turned red. "I pay HOA dues. This is my community. I have a right to peace." Meanwhile, my wife could feel her heart pounding, not from fear of the police, but from how surreal the whole thing was. She was just trying to walk, to keep her baby healthy. And now she was standing there, under the morning sun, being accused of disturbing the peace, by a woman who seemed determined to make everyone's life miserable. The officer turned to my wife again. "Ma'am, you're not in trouble. You're free to continue your walk. Just take it easy, okay?" My wife thanked them softly, tears threatening to spill from frustration. But before the officers could leave, Karen shouted again, "You'll regret ignoring this. I'll file a complaint with the HOA and the city if I have to." The older officer finally snapped, in the calmest professional tone possible. "Ma'am, if you continue to misuse emergency services, you could face consequences. This isn't the kind of thing you call 911 for." Karen gasped, as if she were the one being wronged. "Are you threatening me?" "No, ma'am," the officer replied evenly. "Just explaining the law." They left soon after, leaving Karen fuming on her lawn while my wife quietly walked back home, shaking her head. When she got inside, she sat down, trying to calm her nerves. She called me right away and told me everything. Every word, every glare, every absurd claim. I could feel my blood boil just listening. That was the day I decided I'd had enough of Karen and her constant harassment. She had crossed a line this time, calling the police on my pregnant wife, accusing her of a noise disturbance for walking past her house. It wasn't just petty anymore. It was cruel. And I promised myself, she was about to learn what happens when you try to bully the wrong family. When I got home later that afternoon, my wife was still visibly upset. She sat on the couch with a blanket over her lap, sipping some tea, trying to calm her nerves. Our dog was curled up beside her, almost sensing that something was wrong. The moment I stepped in and saw her face, I knew it had been worse than she had let on over the phone. I sat down next to her and gently asked, "Are you okay, honey? Tell me everything again." She sighed deeply. "I was just walking like always." I didn't even say a word to her. Karen just yelled at me for being too loud, said I was disturbing her morning. Then she called the police. The police of all people. They showed up because I was walking too loud. Her voice broke on the last part, and I wrapped my arms around her. She wasn't someone who cried easily, but the stress of pregnancy mixed with constant HOA harassment had worn her down. I could feel anger bubbling inside me. "That's it," I said under my breath. "I've ignored her nonsense long enough." She crossed the line this time. My wife placed her hand on my arm. "Please don't make it worse," she whispered. "I just want peace. I don't want drama." But it was already too late for peace. Karen had made sure of that. That evening, I walked outside to cool my head. The neighborhood was quiet again, but every house around me had its blinds slightly tilted, watching. Everyone knew Karen, and most of them had been on the receiving end of her complaints at some point. I noticed Mr. Jenkins from across the street mowing his lawn, and he waved me over. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice. "Heard about what happened this morning. Is your wife okay?" "She's fine," I said, trying to stay calm. "But I'm not letting this go. She called 911 because my wife was walking." "Who does that?" Jenkins shook his head. "That woman's out of control. Last month she called code enforcement because my grandkids were drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. Said it was vandalism." I sighed. "Of course she did." He leaned closer. "You know, I heard she's been recording people from her front window. Says she's documenting community behavior for HOA reports." That stopped me cold. "Recording people? Without their consent?" He nodded. "Yup. Everyone's fed up, but no one wants to confront her because she threatens to fine them or call the police. You're not the first family she's harassed." That was the confirmation I needed. This wasn't just a petty neighbor problem. It was a pattern. She was abusing her HOA title to intimidate everyone. I went home and started looking through my security camera footage. Sure enough, our cameras had captured the moment she marched out of her house that morning, pointing and yelling at my wife. The audio picked up every word, including her screaming that she'd report this disturbance. The video also showed her talking on the phone right after, probably calling 911. When I showed it to my wife, she gasped. "She really did this on purpose," she whispered. "Exactly," I said. "And now I've got proof." That night, I decided to file an official complaint with the local police department. I sent them the video footage and a written statement explaining how Karen had misused the emergency line for a non-emergency, something that could have delayed real help for someone who actually needed it. I also copied our HOA president, who was notoriously passive but couldn't ignore solid evidence. The next morning, things got even stranger. Karen showed up at our door. I opened it halfway, expecting more drama, and she didn't disappoint. She was already scowling, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "I need to speak with your wife," she announced coldly. I kept my hand on the doorframe. "She's resting." "What do you want, Karen?" She pursed her lips. "Your wife caused quite a disturbance yesterday. I've already filed a noise complaint with the HOA and the city. You people need to understand that this community values peace. If she continues walking past my house at that volume, I'll push for disciplinary action." I actually laughed. Disciplinary action? For walking on a public sidewalk? Karen didn't blink. "Yes. I've already spoken to the HOA board about it. You're not exempt from our guidelines." I crossed my arms. "Karen, you don't own the street. My wife can walk anywhere she wants. And you might want to be careful about filing false reports, especially to the police. That's illegal." Her face twitched. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said calmly. "Just letting you know the facts. Because I already sent them your little 911 stunt, video and all." That hit her like a bucket of cold water. She blinked rapidly, stammering, You filmed me?" "Our cameras did," I replied. "They cover the front yard and part of the sidewalk. You called the cops on a pregnant woman for walking. You should be ashamed." Karen's lips quivered, but she tried to save face. "You'll regret this. I know people in the HOA. You can't threaten a board member." "Then let's see what your friends think when they find out you abuse 911, I said, closing the door slowly. For the next couple of days, Karen didn't show her face. But the gossip started spreading through the neighborhood like wildfire. Word got out that she had called the police on my wife, and people weren't amused. A few neighbors came by to offer support. Some even shared their own experiences with Karen. Reports of her photographing kids playing outside, complaining about lawn decorations, and filing noise complaints over birds. By the end of the week, the HOA board had called an emergency meeting. I attended, along with a few other neighbors. Karen was there too, sitting at the end of the long table with her arms crossed, glaring at everyone. The HOA president, Mr. Rayburn, cleared his throat. "We've received multiple complaints regarding recent events," he began carefully. "Specifically about misuse of HOA authority and inappropriate police involvement." Karen immediately jumped in. "I did nothing wrong. I was protecting the peace of our neighborhood. That woman was making unnecessary noise early in the morning." Rayburn held up his hand. "Karen, please." We reviewed the video provided by the Smiths. There was no disturbance. Your reaction was excessive. Her eyes widened. "You watched it?" "You can't. That's invasion of privacy." "It was recorded from their own security cameras," Rayburn replied flatly. "You were standing on a public sidewalk." For once, Karen had no response. She looked around the room, hoping someone would side with her. But all she got were glares and folded arms. Rayburn continued. "Furthermore, we learned this isn't the first time you've harassed residents or misused HOA channels to intimidate them. There have been at least 6 prior reports." Gasps rippled through the room. Karen's face turned pale. "This behavior reflects poorly on our entire community," Rayburn said. "Effective immediately, you are suspended from all HOA duties until further notice. The police have also issued a warning regarding misuse of emergency services." Karen's mouth opened, then closed again. She tried to speak, but all that came out was, "You can't do this to me. I am the HOA." Rayburn simply said, "Not anymore." As she stormed out, her heels clicking furiously against the floor, a few people actually clapped quietly. My wife, sitting next to me, squeezed my hand. She looked relieved, truly relieved, for the first time in weeks. After the meeting, several neighbors approached her with smiles and kind words. One older woman said, "You handled that so gracefully. Most people would have lost it." My wife just smiled faintly. "I just wanted to walk." We both laughed a little, because after everything, that simple truth was almost absurd. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the last we'd hear from Karen. People like her rarely learn lessons easily. And I was right. What happened next would prove that Karen still hadn't let go. For a few blissful weeks, things were peaceful. My wife continued her daily walks, this time without being interrupted or glared at. The neighbors, now united against Karen's antics, even started greeting her warmly each morning, a quiet sign of solidarity. For once, the neighborhood actually felt like a community again. But with Karen, peace never lasted long. It started subtly. One morning, my wife noticed a strange notice taped to our mailbox. It wasn't from the city or postal service. It was printed on blank paper, typed in bold font. You are being observed for repeated violations of HOA guidelines. Continued disturbances will result in fines and legal action. At the bottom, in a shaky signature, was K. Matthews, HOA Vice Chair, acting. That title had been stripped from her weeks ago. I laughed when I saw it, but my wife didn't find it funny. She's still trying to intimidate us, she said quietly, holding the paper like it was something dirty. I sighed. She just can't accept that she lost her power. I decided to take the letter straight to the HOA president, Mr. Rayburn. When I handed it to him, he groaned. You've got to be kidding me. We specifically told her to stop representing the HOA. So what happens now? I asked. He rubbed his temples. I'll contact her directly. If she continues impersonating an HOA officer, we'll have to involve legal counsel. Apparently, that warning didn't stick. The next day, I caught Karen pacing in front of our property with her phone out, pretending to inspect the lawn. When she noticed me step outside, she immediately started recording. Smile, she said sharply. I'm documenting your harassment. Harassment? I raised an eyebrow. You're the one trespassing. I'm not trespassing, she snapped. I'm inspecting community standards. You've been spreading lies about me. You're not on the board anymore, Karen, I reminded her calmly. You have no authority here. She sneered. We'll see about that. My cousin's a lawyer. I tried to ignore her and walked back inside. But the next morning, she escalated again. When my wife stepped outside for her walk, Karen was waiting, this time standing on her driveway with a yardstick, as if measuring invisible boundaries. You can't walk past my house anymore, she announced. My wife blinked, confused. What? I filed a noise complaint and got a verbal restriction approved, Karen said proudly. You're prohibited from passing by my property until it's reviewed by the city. My wife knew it was nonsense, but the confidence in Karen's voice almost made it believable. She turned around and came home shaking. She said I can't even walk past her house anymore. That was it. Enough was enough. I decided to go straight to the police again, this time with every piece of evidence I had, the fake notices, the footage of her harassing my wife, and the recordings of her trespassing and pretending to be HOA authority. When I walked into the station, Officer Daniels, one of the same cops who had responded the first time, recognized me immediately. Oh, you again, he said with a wry smile. Karen still giving you trouble? You have no idea, I said, handing him the documents. He skimmed through them, frowning. She faked an official notice? And she's been pretending to act as an HOA official even after being removed. Exactly. And she's now threatening my pregnant wife again. Daniels sighed. All right. This time we'll handle it properly. That afternoon, a patrol car stopped in front of Karen's house. My wife and I watched from our window as two officers approached her door. Karen stepped outside, wearing her usual smug expression, until one of the officers handed her a citation notice. From what I later learned, the citation was for impersonating an HOA officer and repeated harassment. She wasn't arrested, not yet, but it was enough to send a message. For a few days, things went quiet again. But then Karen tried a different approach. Late one evening, while I was watching TV, my phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected near the driveway. I opened the security app and froze. There she was again, Karen, crouching near our mailbox with something in her hand. I zoomed in. She was stuffing another paper envelope inside. I quietly went outside, phone recording, and said, Karen, what are you doing? She jumped like a guilty kid caught red-handed. Oh, I was just leaving you a note. At midnight? I asked. Her eyes darted nervously. It's community business. Urgent. I walked closer, keeping the camera trained on her. You're trespassing again. And harassing my family. This has to stop. Karen huffed, her voice rising. You think you can bully me? You think you can make me look bad in front of the neighborhood? I am the HOA. You people don't belong here. You've ruined this place. That last line hit differently. There it was, the real reason behind all her behavior. Control. Superiority. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She just wanted power over everyone in it. Karen, I said, my voice calm but firm, you need to go home before I call the police again. For a moment, I thought she might actually lunge at me. Her face was twisted with anger. But instead, she stormed off, muttering curses under her breath. The next morning, I finally opened the letter she'd left. It was another fake violation notice, accusing us of operating a disruptive household and causing community unrest. I couldn't help but laugh. The wording was so absurd it sounded like something out of a parody. I sent a copy to both the HOA and the police. By this point, Officer Daniels knew exactly what to do. She's been warned enough times, he told me over the phone. If she contacts you or your wife again, we'll proceed with a restraining order. That seemed to be the final straw. A few days later, Karen's house suddenly went dark. No porch light, no cars in the driveway. One of the neighbors told us she had left town for a while, claiming she needed to de-stress. For the first time in months, the street felt calm. My wife could walk freely, without fear or frustration. Birds chirped again in the morning, and no one was calling 911 about it. But even though she was gone, part of me couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done. People like her rarely disappear quietly. And sure enough, a week later, an official letter arrived from the HOA office. Inside was a new agenda for the upcoming community meeting. At the bottom, in small print, was a familiar name. Reinstatement request, K. Matthews. Karen was trying to come back. When I saw her name printed on that agenda, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. After everything she had done, after the harassment, the fake notices, the 911 call, Karen still wanted to crawl her way back into power. It was almost unbelievable. My wife, though, didn't laugh. She sighed, rubbing her belly gently. She's never going to stop, is she? I placed my hand over hers. Not until she embarrasses herself for good. But this time we're ready. The HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday afternoon at the community center. I didn't plan on going alone. Over the past few weeks, several neighbors who had also suffered under Karen's authority had reached out to us, people she'd fined for harmless decorations, yelled at for kids playing outside, or reported for imagined noise violations. Everyone had a story, and all of them were fed up. When the day arrived, the small meeting room was packed. Even people who usually avoided HOA drama showed up, curious to see what Karen would try this time. She sat near the front, wearing her usual smug grin, a thick binder resting on her lap. Her posture screamed confidence, as if she still believed she ran the show. The HOA president, Mr. Rayburn, began the meeting as usual, going through agenda items, budget reports, and landscaping discussions. But everyone in the room was waiting for one thing, the reinstatement request. Finally, Rayburn looked up, clearing his throat. Next on the agenda, Ms. Karen Matthews has requested reinstatement to the HOA board as vice chair. Ms. Matthews, you may present your case. Karen stood dramatically, straightening her blazer. Thank you, she said, her voice dripping with self-importance. As you all know, I have served this community with dedication and passion for several years. I was unfairly suspended due to a series of misunderstandings fueled by certain individuals spreading false accusations. My actions have always been in the best interest of maintaining peace and order in this neighborhood. A few people muttered under their breath, but Karen continued undeterred. When I called the authorities regarding disturbances near my home, I did so only out of concern for our community's noise policies. I have documentation of multiple incidents that justify my response. I request that my position be reinstated so I can continue protecting the standards of this neighborhood. When she sat back down, she looked around triumphantly, as if expecting applause. Instead, silence hung in the air. Then from the back, a voice called out, "You mean when you called 911 on a pregnant woman for walking?" Every head turned. Karen's confident smile faltered. "That's not what happened," she said quickly. "She was causing." I stood up. Actually, it's exactly what happened. And I have the footage right here. All eyes swung toward me. I had brought my laptop, connected to the small projector the HOA used for presentations. Without saying another word, I pressed play. On the screen appeared the clear video from my security camera, Karen marching out of her house, yelling at my wife, calling her disruptive, then going back inside to dial her phone. The audio captured every word, including her declaration that she was calling 911 because this woman won't stop walking. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Karen's face drained of color. I paused the video and turned to the group. That's the woman asking to be reinstated. The same woman who's been harassing multiple neighbors, faking official HOA letters, trespassing on private property, and misusing emergency services. Mr. Jenkins, sitting 2 rows ahead, spoke up. He's right. She's done the same to me. Called code enforcement because my grandkids were playing with chalk. I've had enough. Another neighbor, Mrs. Lee, added, she accused me of illegal construction for planting rose bushes. She even took pictures of my yard without permission. One by one, people started sharing their stories. It wasn't just us. Karen had spent years bullying everyone around her, and now, finally, no one was afraid to speak up. Karen stood abruptly, her voice trembling but defiant. This is all a coordinated attack. You're twisting the truth. I've worked hard to keep this neighborhood beautiful. Rayburn raised his hand to silence her. Ms. Matthews, that's enough. The evidence and testimonies are overwhelming. You were warned several times about your conduct. You've impersonated an HOA officer, harassed residents, and misused the emergency line. This is unacceptable. Karen's eyes darted wildly around the room, looking for someone, anyone, to defend her. But no one did. Finally, Rayburn sighed and said firmly, the board has decided unanimously. Your request for reinstatement is denied permanently. Additionally, due to your repeated violations, you are prohibited from holding any HOA position in this community in the future. A stunned silence followed. Then someone in the back clapped. It spread slowly, until the whole room was applauding, not out of cruelty, but out of relief. Karen's face twisted with rage. You're all ungrateful. I tried to help you. You'll regret this, she screamed. Rayburn responded evenly, no, Ms. Matthews. What we regret is letting this go on for so long. Karen grabbed her binder and stormed out, slamming the door so hard it echoed. For a moment, everyone sat quietly, processing the drama that had just unfolded. Then people began talking, laughing softly, and sharing a sense of victory. Later that evening, when my wife and I returned home, the neighborhood felt lighter somehow, like the air itself had changed. Neighbors waved, kids played in the yards, and even the dogs seemed to bark more cheerfully. Karen's house, meanwhile, sat dark and silent, her blinds permanently shut. As we sat on our porch, my wife leaned against me. Do you think she's gone for good this time? I smiled. Knowing her, probably not forever. But at least now, everyone knows the truth. She can't hide behind fake titles or authority anymore. My wife chuckled softly. All of this, over me walking too loud. I squeezed her hand. It started with that, but it ended with the whole neighborhood finally standing up to her. For the first time in months, we watched the sunset in peace. No sirens, no shouting, no fake letters. Just the sound of crickets and the distant laughter of neighbors who had rediscovered what community was supposed to feel like. A few days later, a small for sale sign appeared on Karen's front lawn. No one said a word, but everyone noticed. Within weeks, the house was empty. Sometimes, justice doesn't come with handcuffs or dramatic endings. It comes quietly, through truth and accountability. And as my wife continued her peaceful morning walks, her footsteps echoing gently down the sidewalk, I couldn't help but smile every time she passed Karen's old house. No complaints. Number 911 calls. Just peace.